Welcome in to another edition of Inside Carolina on the Beat Live. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. All right, boys. We're going to do this the right way. It's going to be quote, story, moment. Adam Smith, you're on the clock. We're going to start right out of the gate. We can't talk about what we were talking about off the air. That is, I see super duper premium. And I'm joking.
I was trying to copy Gene Triplehorn's message and send it to Ben. I mean, let me cook over here, okay?
Oh my, we've gotten pretty good at this stuff. We're trying to narrow this show down to keep it real and not two old guys and two young guys pontificating on the world's problems. And this is going to be purely a basketball podcast unless somebody has a great football story. Obviously, if you're interested in football, check out Inside Carolina, Adam, Jeremiah's, Evans, Taylor's work. Jason and I talk about it while they do all the hard work over there at Inside Carolina on Tar Pit Premium. But first, Adam, going to you first. Quote of the week, my friend.
Okay, just so I know, we're not talking about anything with football.
If you have a football quote that is relevant.
No, okay. I understand. I heard you. I listened to what the teacher said, and I'm gonna. Okay, let me pull up my. We're getting right into it here, huh?
And for folk, and while Adam's getting his thing, here's my goal at some point is to learn how to do a poll, so that you in the chat, Slagle and Crowley and Goffer and Garrett and Mark, all the guys in the chat, B. Mick, can vote constantly on which three of these IC beat writers is the champ of the week. Jeremiah's first comment was like, "What do we get if we win?"
Selfish Jeremiah. God.
We are the NIL collective of the podcast. We got no money. Adam, you're up.
I'm ready. And it actually goes right along with what our guy B. Mick is talking about. And I tried to choose, I think we all try to choose stuff that the other people might not be doing. So you're not taking anyone's ideas or whatever, although we never talk about it. So this is a little thing from at Pitt the other night. And as you all know, I love it. I love an open locker room. Absolutely love it. That's just, I love it. So I'm here. I got to pull it up here. It's from Harrison Ingram. And keep in mind that this is moments after he shot 2 for 14 from the field. He scored, I believe it was a season low 7 points. He missed his first 11 shots, 0 for 11 to start. The 2 shots he did make were pretty big, I think in the last 5 or 6 minutes. So we made our way over there to him, after talking to Armando and RJ. And the question was, did you see your stat line tonight? And Ingram is just immediately like busting out laughing at the question. He's like, no, I have not seen it yet. And after he says that, he's rocking back and forth in his chair and he's cackling at himself. And I believe I said something like, it wasn't a vintage stat line. And he goes, man, I mean, it was just one of those days. Laughing a bunch more. You should pull up the YouTube video. It's hilarious. Jeremiah did a great job filming it. And so he says, at the end of the day, my teammates trusted me. They told me to keep shooting, so I kept shooting. And I kept missing. And then he's busting out laughing some more. But it happens. It happens, and I'll try to bounce back offensively the next game. That was the quote I chose because I just thought it was an amazing little scene that this is a guy, a proud dude, who has been playing great. Carolina's, I think, 3rd leading scorer on the season. He's dealing with a wrist situation. And he's just, I can't stress enough how much you should watch this video. He's just laughing at himself, rocking back and forth. And I just thought there was an interesting little insight into who he is. Because as you all know, I very much enjoy talking to him. Just a fantastic person, super smart, obviously a great player. But the whole interview is interesting too, because I was picking on him about, I said, who made you the enforcer of this team? Because as you've seen, he likes to give a shoulder to some guys on the opposing teams and get in their faces. We saw it in the Bahamas. We saw it in Atlanta against Kentucky when he went after Dillingham. After Dillingham went after Paxton Wojcik. We saw it the other night. He's like, he could be president one day. But this dude doesn't take any crap, and he's got that mean streak. It's just a fascinating individual, I think. He's sort of as multifaceted as a person as he is a player. And I just thought that up.
Hey, that might be the quote of the night.
If we had a poll, I just won it, guys. You guys can just log off.
Well, I put a poll on there. I don't know if I did it right. So people in the chat are watching it. It's on the YouTube version.
But that's what I've got. And I encourage you to watch the video on the Inside Carolina YouTube channel. It's just so funny to see. He's not only laughing, he's like cackling at himself. He's doubled over at one point, just dying laughing about how many shots he missed. He sort of says like, yeah, I was terrible from the field. Oh, by the way, he had a career high 15 rebounds against Pitt, which was huge. And he defended Blake Henson, as Jeremiah was asking him some good questions about that. He held the ACC's third leading scorer very much in check. Henson had a terrible night from the field. So it was the most shots Harrison Ingram took this season, most misses he had, and the fewest shots he had made. And he's just dying laughing. And I think it also speaks to kind of who this team is overall. It's a different team.
Absolutely. And Harrison Ingram, of course, one of the most important guys on the team. Evan, you good?
I'm good.
I mean, I feel like I'm in Back to the Future, like disappeared.
He's still at his parents' house. It looks like it.
No, I'm actually at my girlfriend's house right now. So I think they've got some shaky Wi-Fi over here. In the
yeah, I know what that crowd does for a living. They've got like fiber ultra. You're probably sitting on a cashmere couch and with 100-inch monitors. Jeremiah, you're up. Quote of the week.
Yeah, I'm glad Adam picked the Harrison Ingram one. I thought that was a really good one. I did not realize, and it makes sense that was the most shots he took in a game this year, but that makes perfect sense. I actually was going to go with a basketball one as well, obviously, but I was going to go with the Seth Trimble route. So Seth Trimble, obviously, he has the 10 points off the bench, 9 when we're in the first half at a time that UNC just could not make a shot. I think probably the most memorable, it kind of depends on if you're a guy that prefers threes or dunks. Obviously, he had the buzzer-beating three, shot clock buzzer-beating three. I thought his highlight play would have been that design lob, coming out of the, on the side out. So he takes the ball out, RJ passes it, or he passes it to RJ. Then he actually runs around the three-point line, cuts down the top of the key, and gets the dunk. It's like eye to eye with the rim on the dunk. But the quote that I got from him that I actually enjoyed the most in the second half, early in the second half, right before that first media timeout, there was a play where one of the Pittsburgh players was dribbling, and Trimble actually reaches in about to get the steal, and at the last second they call a foul. But Trimble had like the entire other half of the court like to himself. So it was probably going to be a Showtime type situation. Like I'm trying to think who the player was. I think it was like Steve Francis or something, like to yourself and like dunking it or something. I don't know what he would have did. So I actually asked him about it. I was like, Seth, do you remember that play when you got the steal and you almost got a steal and they ended up calling a foul? So the first thing that Seth says to me is, I was going to put my neck on the rim. He immediately, no hesitation, I was going to put my neck on the rim. Then he goes on to say, I was trying to put my neck on the rim. I was very upset when they called that back. I was going to do something y'all haven't seen. So I like that one because it was just, we've obviously seen throughout the year, and obviously his athleticism is something that we knew about before he got to UNC. But throughout the year, he's done his best to display that. Obviously, against UC Riverside, he had that poster dunk that's actually, for those who haven't been out to a game this season, that's on the intro video for all their home games. They put that Seth Trimble dunk, and it's kind of like they're transitioning to the next, part of the video or whatever. So you've had that. You've had also just layup attempts where the dude like always goes off of 2 feet too. He always goes off of 2 feet. He said it's because he's had, some ankle injury kind of thing. So he feels more comfortable off of 2 feet. And he said he's always kind of done it like that. But there's been several even just layup attempts this year where he's kind of contorting or whatever, in midair. He looks like he wants to dunk it, obviously, but it doesn't really matter if it's layup or dunk. He's always, getting off the ground about the same amount. So I thought that one stood out because, I think that's probably a forgotten play in the game, but it was something that was certainly on his mind even after the game had already ended. And also, he did have a big contribution in that game. He had like I said, the 9 points when UNC was kind of struggling to get some shots, and I think that helped buffer them a little bit to end up going on to win that game.
Right. Trimble may be the surprise of the year so far. I think he's played well, and if I remember correctly, JP jumped off 2 feet as well.
I was going to say it runs in the family.
Yeah, and he could get up, but he's going to neck somebody, put his neck on the rim, and
as
go.
One does, right? Put your neck on the rim. Yeah,
I've done it. I've done it. It was 8 foot, and we had to knock a few toddlers out of the way to get to the rim. Evan, you're up. Now, I don't want to disturb your night over there, but get in here. The chat's letting you have it. For the record, Gregory Hall has outkicked his coverage, and Evan has too as well.
I love the comment. Is it's the same girlfriend as Gregory Hall's girlfriend?
Well, we had him, and I love Gregory. Gregory, if you're watching, I'm sorry, but we had a Manti Te'o moment for a little while with Gregory, so we had to make sure. Evan, you're up, and we have no such moment with Evan because he has intertwined himself with a good family. Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, it's funny, Adam, with the Harrison Ingram out. That was actually my first quote that I had marked down, but I heard Adam in the video laughing when Harrison said it, so I had a feeling he might take it. So I had a backup quote. So I'm glad I did that. But it was from after the Pittsburgh game. It was Armando talking about just the current state of the team and kind of where he feels they're at. And I remember in the last podcast, I kind of talked about, I think it was before maybe the Oklahoma game or right around that time. I said we were going to learn a lot about this UNC team by the new year. And what Armando said is we're not satisfied. We feel like we should have had 1 or 2 more of those games. UConn was better than us at the moment, but we felt like we left something on the table in reference to the Villanova and the Kentucky games. I think that's a good point. Like, that's kind of how I think the general consensus is about this team. I think everyone at the moment felt like UConn was a step ahead or a class ahead of UNC, but against Kentucky and against Villanova, those were games that could have been wins, or at least felt like UNC was kind of in that same class. And kind of relating it to the Pittsburgh game, just the nature of that game and the physicality and the low shooting field goal percentage and it being the first true road game of the year. I saw a lot of people talking about how this, isn't it the classic, this isn't a game UNC wins last year, which, I think is a fair point. But I also think that's the kind of game a top 10, top 15 team wins. I think UNC kind of furthered the point about they are deserving of what the ranking is that they have right now. And I don't think that's been that way for the past couple of years in the regular season. And I think this is something that this team is going to continue to build on. And I think it's important that a guy like Armando in the position that he's at is kind of understanding just the nature of this team and also understanding maybe the ceiling that they can get to, because it does feel like they still are kind of a far ways away from kind of clicking in all cylinders. I think the only time we've seen them really play at full strength or to their full capacity was probably that first half against Tennessee. And they're going to have a couple of opportunities, especially in the near future on the road, to kind of further put a mark on their top 10 ranking and kind of further validate the spot they have right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think UConn and Kentucky are better than Carolina. Certainly UConn. Kentucky debatable. I think Villanova's the one that they should have gotten. But, I mean, you're in the Bahamas. There's plenty to do in the Bahamas. Sometimes games get away out there. I start a comment, and I want Adam to get in here because Adam is the elder statesman, and I remember this. And Derek Phelps, Derek was in school. So Granville Towers was Derek, Eric Montross, Sullivan, Rozier, and Brian Reese back in the day.
Yeah.
And B. Reese used to steal my breakfast order at Dine Anytime at Granville all the time. But I digress. Cole Anthony got some lobs, didn't he, Adam? I remember that a few times.
That's what we were talking about. TA and I were just talking about this. I feel like Cole Anthony definitely they ran a lob plays for him and Kobe White too, right? I mean, because I think Kobe White. I don't know if anybody's ever he's taller than you think. He's like
Yes.
6'5". I know the hair, make a hair joke there, especially for those of us who don't have any hair. But Kobe White's a tall dude. Like, he's not like a little 6'1" like water bug. And again, Cole Anthony just has ridiculous hops. But I think those are the two guys that come to mind, because I mean, Joel Berry definitely wasn't catching any lobs. I don't think Marcus Page was either, although we've seen Marcus dunk, I'm sure. But they weren't running any lobs for Ty Lawson. But those two jump out to me, Cole Anthony and Kobe White. I think if anybody remembers in the chat, they can correct me, but I remember those guys, I think, certainly being capable of catching a lob if they didn't run those plays.
Absolutely. And again, Trimble, we're talking about his athleticism and ability, but his ability to come in and spell Elliot Cadeau, I mentioned it in post game with Greg the other night. I think it's just huge for this team to sort of save Cadeau from himself sometimes, because Cadeau he takes things so tough when things go sideways a little bit, and I think Trimble's ability to come in and be sort of that balancing force there. But anyway, let's move on. Let's go to and you're listening to On the Beat Live, of course, Johnny T-shirt, JohnnyT-shirt.com, our sponsors, and this is the crew here. This is the crew that brings it all together. Interesting that you guys were traveling yesterday when all hell broke loose on the football side, but still managed to have just wonderful coverage of that. But story of the week. Jeremiah, you're first up on the story.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. My story of the week was actually football related. I don't know if we're
okay, go ahead.
On that. No. My story of the week, and actually is relevant to recent news. I guess all of us were there. It's at the end of the availability, the pre-bowl availability. Me and Adam are at the table. We're talking to Power Eccles. It's like the last guy that we talked to, and this is one of the last 2 or 3 questions that he gets asked. So Adam, and we kind of had, knew that some changes were coming on the defensive staff and things like that. So Adam actually asked Power about Gene Chizik and kind of asked him, is this pretty much the guy that you want, leading the defense and things like that. And so Power goes on to say, and I'm paraphrasing it, but he goes on to say that, and he doesn't even hesitate, that Chizik's the right guy to lead the defense. And he goes on to say that, they're keeping things in-house, but he felt that Chizik was, the right guy. And so that's obviously, and, certainly you don't expect the guy, the day before a bowl game to, trash his coach. I'm not saying that. But I do think that when you consider how that West Virginia game kind of played out, and then you also consider the fact that the first time this season they were in that arena or that stadium, they got 9 sacks and they held, and that's, South Carolina wasn't great this year, but 9 sacks and they held them to, I think, 17 points. And then the obvious contrast between that starting off 1-0, kind of having some somewhat heightened expectations at the time, to then, your season finishes 2-5, really, if you count the bowl loss. And then obviously the changes that are coming. But I think also from that moment, not just the fact that there's, the staff change, really the on-field dynamic too, because Power Eccles that whole game was in Cedric Gray's spot. Yeah, at the linebacker position, he had Amari Campbell, true freshman, right next to him. So it's going to be a new look defense. I think. Well, new look might be somewhat of a strong word. We'll see how who UNC ends up picking up and which freshmen, I guess, in that incoming class, they end up deciding to use, which freshmen from the class they just had, they end up, taking big roles next year, because Caleb Costin, obviously Amari Campbell played a lot. But I think this is just like kind of the sign of a little bit of a transition. You're getting into the post Cedric Gray era. So part of that is, new big playmakers on the defense. And then part of that's obviously new coaching staffs, new coaches on that defense as well. So I don't know. That's one that stuck out to me, just because it was just so close to what ended up happening with obviously Gene Chizik and Tim Cross.
And just to add to that real quick, TA, if you don't mind, I think Jeremiah is absolutely right. I mean, that was kind of an interesting day. I mean, the morning after Christmas, it's a little sleepy, and the juice for the Mayo Bowl is not exactly like the juice for the Rose Bowl, obviously. But, the comments from Mac that day, that was the day he went in on fans being drunk and betting to the stuff that I asked him. And, you heard from Mac that day that it absolutely sounded like the changes were coming down the pipe pretty quickly. And then as we sat over there with Power Eccles, who, by the way, the last couple of times we've talked to him, I think he's been really insightful. He's sort of a man of few words. He's a lot of action and not many words. Power is. And, I think I said something to the point of a lot of people are mad at Gene Chizik. I think is how I started it or something like that. And you could tell that, think about this. This is the guy that Power Eccles has played under, the last 2 years. And Power was taking up for Gene. But I also thought was interesting after the game, we got Kamen Rucker. And the last thing I got to ask him was just, Kamen, you're a 4-year veteran. Schematically, would you like to what would you like to change or add or alter just to help this defense? And I thought his comment was interesting. He said, honestly, I don't know. And then he said that has to come from up top, So I thought that was kind of another telling moment. I've been several telling moments here down through November and December for the Carolina defense and Carolina football team in general. So Jeremiah just mentioned that just takes you right back there. You know what I mean? So just wanted to hop in on that real quick.
No, I mean, it's certainly relevant. People forget, and this is a soapbox thing, people forget these are people. They're not robots. They're not press X and flip the scheme on Madden and things like that. It's real life people there, and it's interesting to see how it all shakes out. Of course, stick with Inside Carolina. These guys will be all over it, and there is no off season and all that kind of stuff. So, Evan, can I come back to you? I'm gonna make Adam go last on the story. Can I come back to you with a story? You got a moment?
Yeah, I've got 1.5 because I had one for football that kind of Jeremiah did touch on that I'll just briefly talk about. Kind of just comparing the full circle narrative and just notion of being back in Charlotte. And I think one of the crazy things of the whole weekend was, talking to Connor Harrell after showed some flashes here and there, obviously wasn't the greatest offensive output with only 10 points, and talking to him about, hurting his ankle early in the game. And once he's done talking with the media, he kind of scoots out from the wall that he was on and he's kind of walking away, and you can definitely see like a noticeable limp as he's walking back into the locker room that we're right outside. There's I don't even know what it's called, a bike gate or something that they use to block things off that's kind of blocking off the entrance to the hallway to where the locker room is. And he kind of grasps that gate pretty hard as he's walking around, kind of just trying to keep some weight off of the ankle, really. And just kind of that image in itself, I think, really just paints this large scale picture of just where this program is kind of going into this offseason. I think this is the first offseason under Mac's second stint that there's a lot of unknowns and maybe not as much juice as there's been in years past. I mean, you had the Sam Howell fiasco and the Drake May excitement. In this offseason, you've got the news today with Diego Pounds, and you've got these question marks at some key positions that I think people are kind of interested to see how that's going to play out. Obviously, you've got to look for a defensive coordinator. Just a lot of question marks, I think, and just the image of, limping into the offseason kind of is how I pictured it, is kind of indicative of what's kind of going on with that program. And then kind of really the other story I was thinking about was after the Charleston Southern basketball game, us talking with Jalen Washington. This was after he had his career high. And he's a dude that, contrary to, I guess, what his roommate Seth Trimble would say, he always came off as a pretty quiet, soft-spoken guy. But after his career high, it was by far the most he's ever smiled or laughed or just super outgoing, I guess, is kind of how he was for his time being there. And it was funny, after me and Adam were done with our work there at 2:30 ish.
You don't have to get specific.
Something around that time. Just to kind of give people the idea of what nerds we are. The big screen on I think it's called the Woody Durham Sports Media Center or something like that. That big screen that you see outside the Smith Center that replays the highlights. It's like, crack in the morning. It's super cold. It's 35 degrees. Me and Adam are walking to the parking lot and we see those highlights and we just kind of just stand there and like watch them all through and just talk through each play. And obviously a bunch of those are Jalen Washington's threes and his dunks and stuff like that. So just kind of all those little small moments I've kind of just tagged along with Adam and Jeremiah and just soak everything up and kind of learn everything I can. But those are one and a half, I guess, of the stories I kind of had from this past week.
Can you feel the love?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like kumbaya at 2:30 in the morning. It's like, let's get the hell out of here, boys. It's cold and it's late.
Listen to UTA, that cold heart. This is a beautiful moment. Let's embrace this.
This is the story. This isn't a moment. I agree. I mean, look,
we did stop and watch it. For whatever reason, when I'm walking out, sometimes I like to watch those. You know how they're always just running them all night. It's kind of cool. Like, oh yeah, I remember that. You know.
Well, the thing about covering a game is you're not really watching the game. You know, it's different when you can just sit and watch a game. You're trying to cover it and report it and tweet it and all that stuff, and then you go back and try to check it out, and there's a ton of stuff you miss. So, Adam, you're up. Your story of the week, not to be confused with the moment. That sounded like a moment that you guys had, and I love it. But story.
Let me tell you something, TA. I hadn't thought about this until about 5 seconds ago, but I'll give you what am I giving you? A story?
Yes.
I'm going to give you a story in the moment. I'm going to take one and blend it in, like, you know,
blur the lines.
I'm a storyteller anyway, you know, like this is how I'm just going to take it from one to the next. And then you can, as the point guard, you can pass it over to Jeremiah or just keep it moving. The ball's not going to stick here. I do have a response for our guy, Gene Triplehorn. That Ben Sherman said he'll leave it to the experts. So that was I had sent the word along to Ben about joining the show. Who knows? Maybe we'll get him one day. Okay, here we go. So I keep going back to Pitt the other night, which I love Pittsburgh as a town anyway. But so I just sort of was struck by the fact, as Jeremiah has heard me say ad nauseum. I'm sorry, I'm gonna put him to sleep on this one, but you know, they last season's team played Pitt on December 30th. By the way, it's the last time they were ranked. They were number 25 in the AP poll. They lost that game and they never returned. It was sort of the beginning of the end, which we did not know that at the time. We thought that since they had beaten Ohio State and Michigan the 2 games before, okay, they're starting to get it back together here. You know, they're going to beat Pitt. They're going to turn the corner into the new year. And, you know, this might be the team that everyone expects it to be. But that day at Pitt, UNC had a 9-point lead in the second half. And to be honest with you, they were sort of cruising, you know, and I will never forget it. I believe Leaky Black got the rebound, dribbled it up the court, took a 3, no pass, and the dang thing went down and back out. I mean, it was halfway down. So that thing's going down for a 12-point lead for UNC, like midway through the second half. Did not go in, rattles out. They're still up 9. Well, we all know what happens. The 9-point lead crumbles. Henson, what was it? Jamarius Burton, number 11, the kid from Charlotte. He went crazy. He actually abused Seth Trimble a couple times late in that game. And UNC loses the game. So they blow a 9-point lead at Pitt. You fast forward to, by the way, Armando was cussing in the postgame that day too. He said a few choice words about BS and other things. He had a lot to get off his chest that day. He actually was like, come over, you know, he was like, come here. You know, when you went in there, like,
I got something to say. Come here.
Yeah, right. I mean, it was like, oh, okay. You know, like, you know, I mean, he legit waved me over. So anyway, fast forward to the other night. It's 2 days after New Year's. It's January the 2nd. The ACC slate is getting going. UNC gets up 9 in the second half, and obviously it was a complete struggle with the shooting. They had a season low in their shooting, still won. But I remember putting it in the story that they got to the 9-point lead, and it could have been ominous if you remember what happened the last time. But they were able to build on it, end up winning by 13. And talking to Armando afterward the other night, you know, he absolutely remembered the way they lost last year and cussing about it. And he was telling a story about how Hubert has started recently doing a lot of situational stuff in practice. He was saying we were doing a lot of last 3 minutes of the game stuff. And I just thought it was an interesting point to connect from last year, 2 days before New Year's, to this year, 2 days after, to the fact that they were able to sort of slug their way through an awful shooting performance the type that they had so many times last year. The last time they had played Pitt in Chapel Hill, they lose by 1 point, UNC does, and they shot 5 for 31 from three-point range. They missed 26 three-point shots. I mean, if one goes down, they win the dang game. And that's awful, obviously. Just imagine if 5 went down. If they're 10 for 31, they win. They walk the dog on them. But I just thought those were 2 interesting points to connect. And Armando is sitting right beside RJ Davis in the locker room, and they're both definitely remember the way the thing got away last year up there. And this year didn't get away. And they closed out the win, and they won the game, and they picked up another quad 1 win. So that was sort of my story or anecdote or moment, that just the through line from December 30th, 2022 to January 2nd, 2024. I thought it was kind of an interesting sort of juxtaposition there. And I will transition. Oh, do you want to go, TA? Do you have a follow-up?
No, what I was going to say is this, and that's why people think this team is different from last year.
Absolutely. It's one of those sort of like the hard evidence you can point to, sort of, but beyond the way it feels and the different personalities and everything. And I'll quickly transition to whatever this is, my anecdote. I hope to God, I will say it quickly because it might be Jeremiah's anecdote too, but I just thought it was interesting that after the game, that's what we're getting. And then we're leaving. I apologize, Jeremiah. I'm sure this might be yours. Then we're leaving, and it's me and Jeremiah and Inside Carolina legend Jim Hawkins, the photographer.
I know what you're going. Yeah.
and we're leaving the Peterson Event Center. It's late. It's probably about 11:30, maybe 12 o'clock. And it's cold, super freaking cold out there. And for anyone that's ever been on Pitt's campus, the thing is so hilly. I mean, it is a ton of hills. We try to help Jim with his bags sometimes. He's got such heavy equipment. I mean, you're making a climb up and down this place, this campus. So we're walking out of there, and it's very quiet. Students aren't back yet. It's a quiet night. And Jeremiah looks like straight ahead of us, and we got to climb up a big ass hill to get to the rental car. And there's like a deer. We're very much an urban campus. There's a deer looking right at us. It's the middle of the night. It's cold. Jeremiah's like, look at that deer. And I was like, what is he talking? Oh my God, it is a deer. Then the next thing you know, here's another deer head popping up. Here's another deer. It's 5 freaking deer.
Yep.
Eventually, as we got closer, we thought it was 1 deer, 2 deer, 3. All these deer are popping up. And they were just, I guess, roaming around. I don't know. They were on the side of this, again, massive hill that we had to take to get to the parking lot where we parked. So that was, they led us to the car. It was the moonlight. It was very cold, clear night. And there were some urban deer there watching us walk out, which I don't know. We talked about it on our way to get a pizza after that. So that was the anecdote I had. I'm sorry if it screwed you over, Jeremiah.
There you go. Look, not far from where Deer Hunter was filmed and all the right moves.
Okay, Sean. You can count on Sean Crowley. Yeah.
Let me talk about Johnny T-Shirt for a second. We're about 30 minutes in or so. Johnny T-Shirt, sponsors of this podcast, great friends of Inside Carolina. Look at that. Jeremiah got the memo. He got. There you go. He is actually doing the work that we should all be doing here. I'm riding the lightning. Jeremiah with the Johnny T-Shirt koozie. You get them if you go to Johnny T-Shirt. You get hoodies, sweatshirts, everything you need. Speaking of cold, it's going to be really cold tonight. In North Carolina, it's going to be really cold tomorrow. So go buy Johnny T-Shirt if you're in Chapel Hill. Students not quite there yet. They're getting back a little bit, filtering back in. Go support the local businesses there on Franklin Street. Lord knows they need it. Johnny T-Shirt, but every business on Franklin Street don't need a corporate takeover on Franklin Street. Need to support local, and Johnny T-Shirt's a pillar there. And if you can't get there, go to Johnny T-Shirt online. It helps just as much. National guys will pay the bills. It's on the beat. I think I titled this Battle-Tested Road Warriors. We're coming back in a second. Okay, guys, second half of the show, we got 158 people. There's a lot of people here on Thursday night. Shout out to everybody joining us. I mean, you guys have so much else you could be doing, and you're hanging out with the four of us. Adam leading the way.
I love reading the chat.
I know, really. I
love our audience. I really do.
So what I try to do sometimes is I try to pull up random comments as y'all are talking, but I don't want to distract. And but I'm gonna start just dragging out random comments because they are great in there. And shout out to everybody that puts them in here. Jeremiah, I need an anecdote, and it can't be about the deer on the hill. And people forget when you go to Clemson, or excuse me, go to Pittsburgh for the football games, you go into Heinz Field or whatever it's called now in downtown Pittsburgh. Baseball stadium's right there. Permanis, all those places are right around there. Pitt's campus is not that. And so, to Adam's point, it is a little bit different than downtown Pittsburgh. But anyway, Jeremiah, you're up.
Yeah, I actually wasn't even going to use the deer one, so I'm glad that ended up being used. Yeah, I don't know. I'm from the outskirts of Greensboro, so I've seen a deer or two in my day for sure. But yeah, actually, the one that I was going to roll with, it was basketball, but it was right before the Charleston Southern game. So the Charleston Southern game was the first home game that UNC had post Eric Montross's passing, and obviously, again, prayers and condolences to that whole family. But what they did before the game, I believe it was actually right before the national anthem. They did a tribute to Eric Montross. So they put obviously his picture up, and they actually cycled beside it a few other pictures of his playing career, then some from his media career. So obviously with his headsets on, and then just also with him in the Chapel Hill community, doing, in his involvements and things like that. So what they ended up doing after the PA announcer obviously was kind of going through some of his, talking about his legacy on and off the court, obviously basketball and non-basketball related. They do a moment of silence. And then after the moment of silence ends, I should have timed it to see how long it was. But after the moment of silence, there was a resounding clap. So people get up. I guess they're already standing up technically, but they just kind of sit there and they just clap. And it just is a natural, just ongoing applause. And then obviously, for those of you all that saw the Eric Montross warm-up shirts after, it was right before the game in Charlotte against Oklahoma. So they used those warm-ups against Oklahoma. They used them against Charleston Southern as well. So I thought that being, the first game in Chapel Hill since Montross's passing, I thought that was a very, just powerful moment. Hubert Davis did touch on it a little bit post-game, obviously shaking up that being his friend for so long. But I thought that was certainly a standout moment, on that day for sure.
Yeah, indeed. And folks, the hat back there, you can order that. I posted that link on the message board a while back, but also donate to the Children's Hospital and all that. Eric, certainly a legend on the basketball court, 1993 national champion and all that stuff, but far more than that basketball side of it. And that speaks to what Jeremiah is talking about is people remember the basketball side, but the non-basketball side is what truly made a difference in Chapel Hill and the area and the state and the country, actually. But, so shout out to Jeremiah for that story. Certainly a great moment.
Yep.
Evan, good luck following Jeremiah. I think I'm going on the YouTube chat right now, and I'm voting for Jeremiah. So, Evan, you're up. I need an anecdote, and then we're going to talk about Clemson. So make it quick. I need a quick story this time. Quick anecdote.
I feel like I already gave mine in a way, right?
You gave a moment. I think I messed up. I think I said moment and story.
You were throwing too many synonyms around all these moment, anecdote.
You're a college student at Carolina. You should understand the rules.
I've got a quick one. I've got a quick one.
Is the Wi-Fi over there? Is that messing up?
This is so for the Pittsburgh game. Obviously, I was covering from afar back in Fuquay Arena. And I always text the guys when I'm back home or if I'm not with them just before, like, hey, you need anything from me? Let me know. Shoot me a text, whatever, because I know I'm quick to my laptop. I've got hopefully good Wi-Fi so I can look something up quick. So the other night, before the Pitt game, Adam was asking me, hey, with it being a quad one game at the time, he wanted to know how many quad one wins or what was UNC's quad one record last season, because obviously that was a very pressing matter as the year kind of transpired, and it seemed like every 24 hours people were checking the net rankings.
Yep.
So I grabbed my laptop, I'm sitting at home on my couch, and I'm looking up net rankings archive, and I can't find it. And I'm looking up net rankings from 2022, and I can't find it. I'm getting so frustrated, like talking to myself, because I can't find these rankings. And funny enough, my girlfriend is actually right next to me watching the game, and she can hear me talking to myself about these net rankings, and she can't find it. And she's like, "Oh, they went 1-9. I found it in this article right here." And sure enough, I look over, and she's already found it on one Google search from, I don't even know who the publication was, but it was an article. And sure enough, I look up UNC Quad 1 9-1 record, and like 6 different publications have had in these articles. And I've already been looking at this thing for about 5 minutes, looking up all these ridiculous key phrases from archive to 2022 to just try to find the full ranking list. And I should have just looked up UNC specifically. So I guess that's a lesson to me to be smart who I watch the games with, because they actually might be able to help me out in some cases. But that was my quick little covering from a far story right there.
From the Fuquay, somebody said shout out. So you need to, can you get her on so she can, I mean, rather than paraphrasing and hearsay, we can get the real thing. Guys, this has been a fun show so far. If you have not voted in the chat, vote. There's a far more people in the chat than have voted, so I need you guys to vote as well. I think Adam's running away with it at this point.
Oh, where is it? Can I see it?
It's on the YouTube chat, so you got to go to the YouTube channel.
Keep them coming, baby.
And, you know, I think it's because I put you first. Maybe it was anyway, folks get in there and vote. I see the votes going up right now. But anyway, let's talk a little bit.
Girlfriend is voting right now. I mean, she a lot of love this show.
She voted for Adam. We can only vote
First
once.
Lady of IC tonight.
So Adam Smith with 47% of the vote, Jeremiah with 33%, and Evan pulling up the rear at 20%, dropped to 19 as I'm speaking.
Oh.
Folks, continue to get your votes in. If you voted early, you only get one vote, so that's why you don't vote early. You wait till all the evidence is in. I'm going back in my old lifetime. You wait till all the evidence is in. Right now, Adam running away with it. Jeremiah, let's talk a little bit about Clemson now, because Pittsburgh is a road win and an important win, but Pittsburgh's not the same Pittsburgh they were last year. Clemson seems legit, even though they had a little trouble with Miami. But going to Clemson as the students filter back in, just sort of what do Tar Heels need to be on point with going to face Clemson down there in Little John on Saturday?
Yeah, certainly. So Miami really just kind of took off on Clemson, you know, kind of late in that game. Miami's a solid team. Like, they really are. They're, 10-2, 11-2. So, you know, that's obviously a solid Miami team that they lost to. I think for UNC, the name of the game is probably going to end up being PJ Hall, just because when I look at, and obviously PJ Hall is their best player, yes. But from a matchup standpoint, I kind of feel like he's going to be the toughest one to really deal with, you know, being 6'10", obviously can handle it and shoot it, and he's been a major factor in this league for a few years now, and then obviously right now I should have checked where he ranks in scoring as far as ACC guys, but he's averaging over 20 points a game, so he's second. Okay, appreciate it.
RJ first, he's second,
and then yeah, so he's a dude, you know what I mean? So I think he's going to be kind of the name of the game. I think honestly right now UNC, they've kind of figured they've kind of gotten on a little bit of a roll here because, kind of as we alluded to earlier, yes, the UConn game, that was a game where UConn just clearly was a better team. Kentucky, I thought that was one that, I did think Kentucky would win the game, but I thought that was one they could kind of compete. But, since then, they've been able to string together some wins and things like that. They even won a game, and these games matter, a game like a Pittsburgh game where you don't shoot it well at all to, win a game like that, especially on the road. A game like that kind of goes a long way because obviously they weren't really winning those types of games last year and really the year before that prior to March. So, I think the fact that they were able to go into that environment and win was big. Now, obviously, Clemson is better than Pitt, yes. But I do think, like I said, those gritty games that you kind of have to win close, those are the ones that, kind of show the character of a team, if you will. And they've lost games like that too. Like obviously the Villanova game was an overtime loss, and then the Kentucky one, it took a full 40 minutes really. I think Kentucky controlled it most of the game, but they still ended up being a pretty close game. So I think for me, it's really just finding a way to make PJ Hall less efficient. PJ Hall also has a lot of guys around him that can kind of help. That's a good offensive team, but I think if you make him less efficient, I think that's going to go a long way. And then offensively, just relying on the guys, relying on obviously RJ Davis scoring, relying on some of those guys on the perimeter as well.
Joe Girard. I mean, good God, man. I mean, what is up with Joe Girard transferring and orange jerseys and all? Evan, what's the key for North Carolina against Clemson on Saturday?
I am going to say, it's funny you bring up Joe Girard. I think the key is going to actually be Seth Trimble, because I think against a team like Clemson, I think if I was coach, which obviously I'm not, I think I would kind of take an approach that they took with the Duke teams of the Paolo Bancheros and basically allow PJ Hall to get his, because I think he's such a skilled player in terms of his size, his shooting. I mean, I think he's close to 38% from three on good volume. He can handle it. He can move great. I mean, he's a beast, and I think it's going to be hard to stop him. But if you take the idea of like they did with Paolo Banchero and let that guy get his, but pretty much shut everyone else around him out, I think that's where UNC could be successful. And I think when you have a team like Clemson that has a Joe Girard who's shooting over 45% from three this year, you're going to need a guard to step up defensively. And I think that guy is Seth Trimble. I don't think you can trust RJ or Elliott to really kind of rattle that guy up to this point. So I think just collective team defense regarding the guys outside of PJ Hall, I think is going to be the biggest key. And I think over these past three games, they've been probably their three best defensive performances, especially when you consider mainly the Oklahoma and the Pittsburgh games in terms of quality of opponent. Those are for sure, I would say, probably their two best defensive games since they were quality opponents, and they held them to, I think, both under 60 points, right? I could be wrong about Oklahoma. I think they might have had 70. But I thought it was funny. This is actually one of the two games remaining on UNC schedule that Ken Palm has UNC projected to lose. I think right now it's 80-79. The other game is at Duke at the end of the year. So this will be an interesting game. I think it's going to be an insane environment. I think everyone's kind of understands that, especially with students getting back to that, getting back on campus. And even with the Miami loss, this is still a really good team. So I would say number one key is kind of try to limit the damage that everyone else around PJ Hall does and maybe let kind of his get his own.
Interesting stuff. Adam, you're going to close the show, but I'm going to talk about Congruity first. CongruityHR.com/Tar Heels. Go get your free assessment if you're a small or mid-sized business. We talked about on the reaction show the other day about HR and personnel and all that with Carolina football. Well, Congruity handles all that. Congruity handles that for your small business and your medium-sized business. Go to them. Let them give you a free assessment on what you might need. And if you need it and you want it, you got it. If you don't, it's free, so you didn't lose anything. But they've got top-of-the-line customer service, top-of-the-line technology, and top-of-the-line everything that you need as a small business owner to grow your business. They take care of the people. You handle the business aspect. CongruityHR.com/Tar Heels for your free assessment. Inside Carolina people get that stuff for free, get the assessment for free, and then they'll see if they can work out a plan for you. Adam Smith, at the moment, we've got 150 plus people in this chat, and I've only got 61 votes. So we need people to vote.
We don't necessarily need people to vote. I like where the results are right now.
Well, you can't complain if you don't vote. You know, isn't that what we say all the time?
If you're in line, stay in line.
Yes, exactly. Adam Smith currently, before he gives his final monologue, is up 51% to 30-20 over Evan Rogers. Evan exactly where he needs to be. He's got to work himself up. He's got to get the experience. As I talk, Adam goes up to 52%.
Let's run away with this thing, everybody.
You're going to. Just see if you can push it to 70 plus, Adam. Go. Close us out.
I mean, Jeremiah's hair looks great tonight. He looks great every time I see it. Everybody looks great. Let's run away with this. Let's teach these young puppies a lesson. I mean, for God's sakes.
Gotta put an asterisk on it like Baycott's scoring record, you know?
Right.
Yeah, how do we feel about that? No, go ahead.
He put an asterisk on it himself. So there you go.
He did?
Yeah, he
got
did.
to shout out Fireman Lamont. We met him the other night at the Charleston Southern game.
Shout out Fireman Lamont. Yes, sir.
He was there. Looked like we had his family. He was shouting out Evan. He was telling Jeremiah he was proud of him. I dapped him up at halftime.
He met my mom.
Great.
Whoa, it's getting deep. Evan introducing his mom.
Nice, fit on, as the children would say. I mean, he was showing out for the appearance of the Charleston Southern game. He was up in the upper deck, but he was still bringing the energy big time. Yeah, Sean Crowley. I don't
there
know.
you go. That's the winner. Sunrise biscuits for Adam. Not yet though. It's gone down. The more you talk, the further it goes down, Adam.
All right, I concede my time. I give my time back.
Stop the count. Serious question. Carolina and Clemson. This is a big game for North Carolina basketball. This is one of those ones. A lot of people have said Hubert has adapted. This team is different and all. This is one of those games that can certainly stamp that in ink if they can go to Clemson and get a win. Adam, your thoughts on what needs to happen?
Oh, if they're able to get a win, it's a win we'll be talking about 2.5 months from now when the NCAA tournament seedings come out. I think it's only 4 unbeaten teams. I mean, these teams have only played 2 conference games. I think there's only 4 unbeaten teams left in the ACC play. And 2 of those play each other Saturday in Winston-Salem, Miami and Wake Forest. So you'll have one dropping off the unbeaten list there. I mean, by the time Sunday comes, and, UNC could be UNC and the Wake Miami winner could be the only unbeaten teams left after 3 conference games. And it certainly will be a long road the rest of the way. I mean, it's a 20-game conference season. It's such a grind. But I was thinking as we were talking about, the atmosphere at Little John, which is usually always charged for Clemson. For UNC and Duke. You can watch some of those games at Little John and you're like, well, they're just waiting until football season. But when UNC and Duke show up, just like everywhere else on the ACC, they're out for blood. And I was thinking, what was it Leakey's mom the last time they were there telling people to hush? Is that right? What was it?
Was it that one?
I was there covering it, but wasn't she on the broadcast?
Was it there or was it during the COVID year when you could hear her letting people hold it?
Well, I think the last time they were there.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I don't think they didn't go there last year. They beat them badly in Chapel Hill.
It was when Brady had the layup right at the end.
Right. He made a cut. Caleb Love was going in for a layup and slipped it to Brady cutting on the other side.
Yeah, Leakey's mom was on the hot mic.
Yeah. It was a great escape for the Tar Heels. But yeah, I mean, last year they played one time in Chapel Hill and Carolina blitzed them. That was a game they needed. Leakey completely shut down Hunter Tyson. I think Hunter Tyson only had 3 points. I mean, he locked him up. And interestingly enough, you're talking about Joe Girard. I know Leakey wasn't the primary defender on Girard when UNC would play Syracuse, but they would put Leakey on him for some change of pace. And you want to talk about the length. And he would just swallow that little boy up. I mean, we have some – I know for a fact I've used them with Leakey stories before. We have some Jim Hawkins photos of Leakey defending Girard, and it looks like, Plastic Man, wrapping up, a small child. I mean, just the difference in – like he used to do on Kihei Clark. But anyway, none of this helps for Saturday. I think something to think about, and PJ Hall, obviously, he factors into everything they do, but I was looking at it today, and that's a sneaky, long, I don't know if big is the right word, but they have some height on that front line. Hall is 6'10". Ian Shefflin is like a 6'8", 6'9" banger. And the Chauncey Wiggins dude, I know he's super skinny, but he's like 6'11". Pitt, UNC played Pitt Tuesday night. Pitt led the ACC in rebounding margin. UNC out-rebounded them 51 to 41, which was huge, I thought. And Pitt had the height advantage, in terms of starting lineups. UNC is going to be smaller than them across the front line on Saturday. And they're going to need Harrison Ingram. They're going to need Cormac Ryan. They're going to need all those guys crashing. And Clemson, interestingly enough, is number 2 in the ACC in rebounding margin. So you got Pitt 1, Clemson 2. So, I mean, I know you can say that about every game that you got to get on the glass, but I think that's huge. I think the foul situation, PJ Hall got in foul trouble last night at Miami. I think he fouled out with more than 4 minutes to go. And I feel like Armando, I would have to look it up. This is just rattling around in my bald head, but I think Armando has fared pretty well against PJ Hall in the past. I don't think PJ did a ton last year in Chapel Hill, although it could be totally wrong. I feel like Chase Hunter played really well, but I don't remember. But I mean, I think the Armando PJ Hall, who is able to play with physicality, throw their body around, protect the rim, and also not pick up the fouls, would be huge. And I think you need Cadeau to be present and not to have sort of a shrinking effort. I know that's another obvious thing, but I think this is going to be a really tough game. I mean, it's tough to win on the road, and I think Clemson's going to be pissed after losing at Miami. And Clemson has been good this year. But if UNC is able to win, that is a win I think that's going to stand the test of time, winning on someone's home court. The net loves Clemson. I think UNC, what is it, Evan? I think UNC's up to 12 now in the net. I mean, they've really risen high. I think UNC would be in line. If they started the tournament today, what is it, January 7th or something? If they started the tournament today, I think UNC might get like a 3 seed, somewhere in that range. So, yeah, I think it's going to be super interesting. I can't wait to cover it. And we'll see what happens, but that's what I've got.
It is an event in Clemson when Carolina shows up there. Good thing for the Tar Heels is at noon, and the students will be filtering back in. But if it's at full throat, it is a tough place to play. And Clemson, of course, I think Clemson's on that thing is when they've dominated in November and December, and they've sort of shrunk away, kind of like the football team in Chapel Hill. Late in the season, they disappear. Clemson is trying not to do that this year.
How about that image from years ago of Brad Brownell putting his finger in Roy's face? We've all seen the photo. I know our former teammate, Ross Martin, used to talk a lot of trash about Brad Brownell for sticking his finger in Roy's face.
And the fact that he survived. I mean, Clemson would be terrible, and Brownell was still there.
And I believe Roy was going like, now, hold on now, Brad. That's, I think Kennedy Meeks had done something that angered Brad Brownell that night.
I think he was talking smack. What is Meeks was, or one of those guys was, what is it about Clemson and Carolina that gets the juices flowing? It's always a fun trip. You guys will be covering it. We'll be covering it inside Carolina. Adam and Jeremiah will be on the ground. Are you going, Evan?
I will not.
So you will not. Well, you could hang out at the SO Club, which is right there too as well, while they cover the game. But anyway, folks, check back in at Inside Carolina tomorrow. Taylor Vipolis and Joel Berry's Rafters show will be up. Of course, On the Beat will be on the podcast feed as well. And, of course, the post-game will happen on Saturday. I think it's Dewey and myself after Carolina and Clemson. And, of course, stay tuned to Inside Carolina for all of your basketball, football, everything. There is no offseason, folks. Football is hot. Basketball is hot. And Adam Smith wins the poll at 49%. Jeremiah at 31%. Evan at 21%. Work to do, fellas, to dethrone
thank
Adam.
Everybody who voted for me.
Adam can thank everybody. It's been a fun night. It's always fun to talk to the people. It's always fun to hang out with you guys. It's always fun to have Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity as our sponsors. Thanks, fellas.